Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you. Welcome to the sixth and final day of the TIFF Industry Conference. I'm Karina Rotenstein, I'm the conference programmer, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is an exciting one, we're very excited. First, with deep humility and gratitude, on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank the original keepers of this land, the Mississaugas of New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat for hosting us here today and every day on their land. I'd also like to acknowledge the industry sponsors who make everything TIFF does possible. So our lead sponsors are, thank you to our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oréal Paris, and Visa, and our major industry supporters, the Ontario Media Development Corporation, who is also sponsoring, supporting this panel and every panel in the Dialogues program, and to Telefilm Canada, that is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Just a reminder that there is no recording or video or photography in the studio, but we are live streaming, so please feel free to use our hashtags over there and connect with our online audiences tuning in this morning. So all week we have been focusing on storytelling in long-form films and television, but this morning we have two sessions, so here and the next one at 12:15 in Conference Room B, where we show our love to the short film form. So whether you're a director directing actors, an actor directing actor, or a director directing non-actors, this session explores the creative loop and exchange between actors and directors, and its effects on performances and storytelling. So you're in for a real treat. Now, this intro was already way too long. It wasn't very economical, was it? We're going to learn about all of that. So this morning of shorts, let's get started. I'd like to welcome the chair of today's session, Danis Goulet. She is the TIFF Short Cuts programmer and also an award-winning shorts filmmaker herself. She will introduce our guest. Please welcome Danis Goulet.
Thank you. Hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to start by just introducing our guests on the panel. So I'm going to start with Connor Jessup, who's an actor and filmmaker. As an actor, he's been in the festival films Blackbird, that was here at the festival in 2012, also Closet Monster, which was here in 2015. And as a director, his credits include Little Coffins, Boy, and Lyra's Forest, that's at the festival this year. He is also, as an actor, on the American television show American Crime on ABC, and he's also an alumni of the TIFF Rising Stars program. Welcome, Connor. And our next guest is Yassmina Karajah. She is a Jordanian-Palestinian filmmaker residing in Canada. She is an alumna of the University Bristol Law School. She's a graduate of the UBC's film production program and also a graduate of the CFC Directors Lab. She was in the festival in 2014 with Light, and she is back this year with Rupture. Welcome, Yassmina. And finally, Sophie Beaulieu. She is a filmmaker from France. She has a degree in linguistics from École Normale Supérieure, and she is here at the festival with her debut short film called I Didn't Shoot Jesse James, starring Jackie Cario. Welcome, Sophie. Thank you. And before we get started, we're just going to watch the trailers to each of their films. Thank you. So, Connor, I'd like to start with you. Obviously, you've been acting for many years, I hear since you were 11.
Yes.
And I'm curious about the switch to the role of director and how your work as an actor has informed your work now as a director.
Yeah, I started acting when I was 11, mostly because I didn't do anything else, and I didn't play sports. And I think there's a common thread that connects all kids who don't play sports. And it's a mixture of restlessness and sort of forced ambition, I guess, because you don't have, you don't get to burn that competition away. So I was bored as a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, and I loved movies. And the only thing that seemed to really, the only thing you can do professionally, sort of strangely, as an 11-year-old in movies is acting. There's no 11-year-old cinematographers. So it seemed like the way to do it. And then I didn't really know what acting was. I didn't really know what movies were. But as I started to act, I started to love that on its own terms. But at the bottom of my mind was always this thought that when I was old enough, I would start to direct for real. And I don't know what that meant, but I guess when I turned 17 or 18, I started to feel like I was old enough. So it was never really a question for me that I would start directing as soon as I could. And in terms of how it influenced it, I feel very lucky because I never got to go to film school. So really everything that other than watching movies, everything that I've learned has been through working and through working for, as an actor, I've had the opportunity to be on sets for hundreds of days in my life, which is, there's no other way to learn those things and to learn how people work and what people's jobs are and how a set functions and to work, especially in TV, with many, many different directors who have many different approaches and to learn especially what not to do, but also what to do. And it gave me a lot. And then on a material level, it gave me access to people that a lot of the people that I have had the opportunity to work with who are way more experienced and talented than I am are because of connections I made through the work that I've done as an actor. So there's a lot of interpenetration, and I hope that there will continue to be.
Okay, that's great. I want to pick up on what you said about what not to do, because there can be some fun stuff there. You don't have
no idea.
You don't have to. Okay, but we want to have a little idea. Okay. So you don't have to name names or anything, but because I think there is a lot to be learned from what not to do, and what do you feel are ways that have been really ineffective direction, or when have you received direction that has not worked for you? Or if you want to just tell us like a total horror story, it would be really fun.
I'll try to be quick. The directors are all different, but it's also actors are all different, right? So things that I find obnoxious or that don't work for me might be great for another actor. Yeah. Like if a director took me into a tent and said, like, listen, now that was fine, but listen to this song, and next take I want you to be this song, I would be like, go away. But some actors, that would like really excite them. So it's a personal thing. But I was in an audition once with a fairly well-known director who I won't say, and I was in there for like 45 minutes, and the only thing he said to me the whole time was, I did many, many takes, and he just said, "That's okay, but I need you to be deader. Like, I need you to be dead." And I was like, okay, so like smaller? He was like, "No, I need you to be deader." So I still don't know what that means. Clearly, I didn't get the part. Clearly, I'm too alive or something.
Okay, so I have a question about when a director tells you to go smaller.
Yeah.
Is that insulting in any way, or is that helpful to you?
It's helpful if you know. Sometimes, it's like there's a joke about, bad direction is like faster, more energy. But sometimes, if you know the director well and you know what they mean, if you have a common understanding and someone says it's faster, and it can mean something to you, But you also have directors who say faster or smaller to everyone in every context, because that to me feels like a directorial crutch, because an easy way to make bad dialogue or mediocre dialogue work or like pass is to make it quick and throw it away. So it's, if you see a director who's, everything is leaning toward that, I start to get a little suspicious. And whenever I start to lean towards that too much, I start to get a little suspicious of myself. I'll tell one story that has nothing to do with directing actors, but it's amazing. There was a director that I worked with who, do you know, like on iPhones you have Artemis, like the viewfinder app? Yeah. So this was a big TV show, and we were blocking a scene, and there's a lot of people standing around, like a whole crew and actors acting, and he had his iPhone out as if he was, and he was walking with the actors as if he was looking through his the viewfinder. But I was standing behind him, and he was actually looking at his text messages. So that's, I think, when you know you have to retire.
Lovely. Yassmina, you in Rupture worked with first-time performers, so they'd never done this before, and also some of them were, they were portraying quite a difficult story, and a lot of them were bringing their real-life experiences as refugees, war survivors, to the film that you were making. Can you tell us about how that relationship started, what their involvement was, and also just what it was like to direct them?
Yeah. I think the vision I had for the process of directing Rupture was very much about using acting as a method for healing on some level. So it really started from that place, wanting to connect and build trust, and then say, is there a way for us to make a film that in some way is not just about making a good film, but where something transformational could happen on a personal level, both director and actor. And so obviously that comes with its challenges, and it was also a very fulfilling experience for me. And I think I started by saying we're co-creating this film together. And when I say co-creating a film together, I don't mean I'm just giving you a script and let me know, is this line working for you? Do you want to, it wasn't like that. It was, let's, I want you to be involved every single step of the way. And, in just structurally, the story itself, which is these kids who are roaming this new city, trying to find a public pool, started from a personal experience that the protagonist, Asad, actually went through the first day he got here. So there was that familiarity to start with. And then I knew that the rest of the film was going to evolve by getting to know them, getting to know their backgrounds, their stories from back home, and their stories here. And so what we did is we did acting workshops for over a month. And one of the things that we would do is say, okay, so who am I? Who is my character? How are we similar? How are we different? What are aspects about my experience, my personal experience, that I'm uncomfortable with? And what are aspects of my character experience that they're uncomfortable with? And try to just unpack that. And through that process, the stories started to come up. But
Do you feel like giving them a character in kind of the classic way was a way for them to also feel safer in any way?
Absolutely, yeah, because talking about what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable also just established trust off the bat, where there were certain things where they said, you know what, this actually happened, but I don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about it. And then I would say, okay, do you think there's something about that character's experience that is close to what happened? And then they'd say, yeah. And then I'd say, well, is there a way we can explore it in that way? So it was a lot of collaborative back and forth, getting to know them as people, and then constructing the characters in the film based on them, but also a bit separate from them, so that there was this safety there. And it kind of tied back to, conceptually what I wanted to make with this film, which is kind of an ode to self-determination in the midst of displacement, striving to reach this authentic self against all the noise that's around you. And so even the process itself, the training and all the workshops that we did, in some ways eventually mirrored conceptually what we were trying to say.
Did you do an audition process, or did you always know who they were going to be?
So my casting director, Lina Isa, and I, they live in Surrey, BC, and I met Asad, who's the protagonist, at a welcome center when he first got here, and so I knew Asad was going to be in the film, and I was going to revolve the film around him and the story that he experienced. But then we would just go to Surrey and meet one family and say, we're interested in making a film. This is not a film where we're trying to kind of expose traumas, or we actually want to give agency to these kids and create a film together. And then one family would, give us the number of another family. And eventually, I think we met every Syrian family in Surrey, which was great. And they were so open, and they opened their homes to us. And it became a bit of a family, We speak the same language. We come from very similar cultures and backgrounds. So that was definitely, a good step towards that, building trust. But yeah, we met so many kids, and then...
But you wouldn't formally audition them, you would just sort of do it in a bit of a different way, maybe?
I mean, we auditioned them in parks, on the street. It was that kind of audition. We didn't have like a table there and like read your lines, and that wasn't the process. But what we would do is, I would just give them kind of a situational circumstance, and I'd say, okay, just improv if this happens, and then I would pair different kids together, and then ultimately we ended up casting Asad, Hussein, Salam, and Wazira, because they were just so talented. They were their face told the story, and then when they actually started to act, it was just, I was really blown away by just how excited they were about the whole process, and just how much they brought to even that small situation that I gave them. Where they went with it, their imagination. It was quite inspiring.
Great, thank you. So Sophie, for your film, you were working with Sophie Beaulieu, who of course is a veteran and famous actor in France. I mean, he's been in the industry as an actor for over 40 years. And if you look on IMDb, there's over 100 credits.
Yeah.
So this is your first film. How did he come into the project, and what was it like to work with such a veteran?
Okay, I don't know how I'm going to be as comfortable as you and speak English for 3 minutes in a row. Actually, we contacted his agent, and she gave the script to him, and he read it, and he was very excited about the fact that I was asking him to be Robert Ford and not Jesse James. And he called me and said, maybe you made a mistake, because Bob Ford is a normal guy, guilty guy, weak guy, I mean, like normal people. And he said, you sure you don't want me to be Jesse James? And I said, yeah, of course, that's the whole point. I want you to be Robert Ford. And he was very happy about it, and that's probably why he accepted to make the film. And the other thing is that he was very happy to play in a comedy. Well, that kind of absurd comedy.
Yes.
So that's how.
So you had no prior connection to him. You literally just called his agent and sent the script.
Yeah, I think it's quite common in France. Famous actors, they can do short films like very easily. But not very easily. I mean, we had to struggle a little bit. And then working with him was a real pleasure, because he was very involved. For example, we had to, I remember, he worked for like 12 hours in a row, and he was really trying things. For example, he came up with the stammering, because in my film he stammers a little bit. Yeah. Well, I had to, reduce it a little bit. It was too intense, and I like what is...
Did you tell him to go smaller?
I wouldn't use the word. I would be like, it's fantastic, but just a little less. Not smaller, but a little less. But well, since it's, I'm always tempted to, I don't know, to theatricality in terms of how, because I think it brings more absurdity and something offbeat. But I have to calm myself down, so I have to calm my actors down too. But I remember one story during the shooting. Chiki had been working all day, the night was falling, and we had to shoot the back, follow a car and shoot the back of the car on the road, and the car was a big yellow car, really hard to drive, and so we said to Chiki, we're going to shoot this now, so you can rest, someone else is going to drive the car, and he said, no way, I'm driving my car. We won't see you, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but I'm going to drive it. So that was really nice.
And was there any aspect of it because he had so much experience? And I think directors experience this a lot because they work a lot less than all of the crew usually does and all of the actors. So were you daunted at any point by the process?
I was nervous. Well, I realized that the actors need to be reassured all the time and trust you as an artist. So you gotta be nice and gentle. I mean, I remember after the shooting I had cramps because I smiled too much. So you gotta be nice, but at the same time, you gotta be demanding and confident, sure of what you want. So you have to answer every question they have in terms of what you're doing. So I was very scared because I really wanted them to say the words I had written in the script and not something else. So I was like, oh, what are they going to say? They're very experienced. Who am I to tell them to just say the script? And they were really reassured by this. Chiki said, yeah, you wrote this. I'm going to say what you wrote. So
that's good.
And what I would say to answer your question, maybe more precisely, is that we had to build a trusting relationship, and it involves calling each other, having dinner, sending us emails for whatever reason, and just being friends, and really...
And I'm assuming, did any of you rehearse before? I mean, Yassmina, you talked about rehearsal, but with the more, like Connor and Sophie, did you rehearse?
In fact, yeah, I was not, I mean, it's a short film. I was not going to tell them we were going to have 10 sessions of rehearsal, but we had one.
Yep.
Yeah, we had one altogether.
We rehearsed a little bit, but not, the movie, my movie's quite short, and it's more of like a sequence of action than anything. So we rehearsed a little bit just to help me figure out some blocking. But that was quite brief.
And Connor, earlier you said that, obviously all actors are different. They're going to need different things.
Yeah.
All directors are different. How do you, as a director, try to figure out what an actor needs?
To be honest, it's hard on short films because you have 1 to 5 days, depending on the size of your film, maybe. And it's really, on feature films, or on TV, you find that like the first 5 days of shooting are that like warm-up period where everyone gets to know each other and gets into rhythm. Whereas on a short, like that warm-up period is the entire shoot.
Yeah.
So you don't really have the same opportunity to, in an in-depth way, to form that relationship. But I think you just have to, I probably can speak better as an actor, but I think you just have to be aware, I think as a director, as an actor, you think that everyone on set is thinking about you and talking about you all the time. And that your performance in that scene is the most important thing that's happening that day. And as a director, you're thinking about 150 things.
Yeah.
You're thinking about the lighting, you're thinking about what's coming next, you're thinking about how far behind you are, you missed that shot. I think actors don't appreciate how much is going on in directors' head, and directors don't appreciate how like a cramped little black hole is going on inside of actors. So I think...
And do you agree with Sophie when she said that nurturing is a very good thing?
Yeah, I think I can say this because I am one, but I think most actors are like children.
Like what?
In the sense that they can be like full of life and wonderful things, but they also need a lot. And even the ones that seem confident and strong and experienced and independent, really, it's all a facade, you know. No one gets into acting really because they're like a secure person. Right? So I think you have to remember that as a director, because it's easy when you see an actor who's doing a good job in a scene, especially, and they're reliable, or like you have the older actor maybe and the younger actors need work. It's easy to think like that person's going to give me what I need every time, and they're reliable, so I'll focus here. And meanwhile, that actor is probably thinking like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? He's not even talking to me. This is a disaster. What am I going to do? I haven't had any direction. So even if the best advice I ever got, and this was a director that I worked with, was that, maybe not the best advice, but a good piece of advice, was that you should always, not after every take, but you should always try and find something detailed to say to an actor, even if it's a complete bullshit. Like that thing you did with your hand, it's really good. Because then the actor will be like, what's good, wasn't it? That thing I did with my hand, he's paying attention.
Golden nuggets, people, golden nuggets.
Of course, it's better if you actually believe the thing that you're saying. But I think directors are, I think people, it's not like a, we're not mechanics, it's not like it's a technical job. So I think the best directors that I've worked with are the ones that are the most aware of that.
Great. You want to jump in?
Yeah, speaking of that, I think I'm always so interested in how sometimes afraid directors are of actors and actors are of directors. It's just this feeling you get, and it's in some ways it's really, the idea is to build trust. So just going through the motions of just being in that discomfort a bit until you get to a place of connection, I find really important. And what I do sometimes is I say, listen, like, I might at some point, because I'm thinking of 100 different things, give direction that is not very clear. It might happen. Just to kind of, go away from that hierarchy of like, I'm the director and you're it. And I say, if it's unclear, tell me. There's nothing wrong with you coming up to me and being like, you know what you just said there, I'm not quite sure. Is there a way we can, And then I also make it a point. I mean, for me, it's always my responsibility to do that, right? But I just cut that tension right off the bat, and I say, let's just speak as equals here. And I'm not trying to get something out of you. You're not trying. It's not, at least kind of the films that I make, I want to have that real connection. And so there are other times where I see that something's not working, and I go, listen, I feel like there's something really interesting here. I want to explore it further, but, perhaps the location is not working, or perhaps the blocking is not feeling right. So sometimes just having these conversations in a more candid manner, once you've set the space and you feel like it's a safe space and the actor is comfortable in doing what you were saying of, reassuring them and stuff, sometimes it's also nice to say, just listen, if something's not working, let's just talk about it, just in a more kind of straightforward manner.
And I think with non-actors, if they're not versed in self-expression, for example, that can actually, I think the emotions can really go up and down. And I don't know if you had that experience during rehearsal or even on set. I mean, there's quite an emotional scene towards the end of the movie. And were you ever concerned about, especially, their children or teens, and were you ever concerned about how to, because you work on creating that safe space, but
right.
Was that ever a concern that?
Yeah, it was a big concern. It was a bit of a dilemma too, right? Because we became really close, and on the one hand, you're thinking as a director, and you're thinking, I want this moment to be real. I want to try to push it for, as far as I can. And then you go, well, I'm also working with children. I'm working with children that have had traumatic experiences, and there's always that kind of moral dilemma for me personally that I'm going through while I'm working. One of the things that I did to actually try to work around that is I told them, knowing that they're first-time actors and their backgrounds, I said, you're not bound to my action and my cut, which I think is like, I don't think any director would say that. Like, the idea is, if when I call action, we start, when I call cut, it's over, right? And I said, you're not bound by that. And I said, anytime it feels too much, we kind of developed a sign. And it was interesting because I saw that they were kind of testing me a bit at the beginning to see if I'm actually gonna stop.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it would be like a big scene or something, and, you know, it's going so well, and then just one of them would just stop and do the sign, and I'd say like, okay, we're gonna take a break now, and but they did it once or twice, and then when they saw that I was honest in what I was saying, it stopped happening anymore. So I think that just like off the bat created a space where, yeah, they didn't feel like, you know, they felt like that they were in charge in some ways of that moment, and they could stop whenever they wanted. And the minute that happened, it was interesting because it never happened again later in that process. But for that scene that you're talking about, we have a really emotional scene towards the end with one of our actresses. And I remember it was the protagonist's scene, actually, Asad. And we had the camera on him, and I think it was like take 8 or something, and I still felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And then he just stopped and he goes, "You want me to cry?" He said that. And I go, okay. Like, I was just so taken aback by that. And I said, not necessarily. He's like, "I'm not gonna cry. I just want you to know that I'm not gonna cry." And I just thought that was such a special moment where he kind of felt like we were going to a place that wasn't comfortable, and he said, "I don't wanna go there." And what was interesting is when I had my earpiece on, I could hear Salam, which was on the other end of the scene, and I could hear it in her voice. And I said, okay, that's fine. If you don't want it, we're gonna take a break. And then we sat there, and one of the ways to kind of go through that discomfort is say, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this? And one of the things that Salam kept saying, we're doing this because we wanna talk about loss. We're doing this because it's an homage to a tribute to all the people that we miss. So just bringing all that into that moment, it became not just about the acting, it became about something bigger, and that's how we were able to go through that, really difficult scene.
Beautiful.
Between the actors, yeah.
And just on a practical level, did you build more time into your schedule?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shot for 7 days, and we didn't have full days of shooting, so this way, we spent more time on each scene rather than, because I knew we're gonna need the time to readjust and stop and pause and rethink, and, to me, their comfort was the priority. So I knew I needed the time to establish that.
Great. And Sophie, I want to ask you about directing comedy. Because the movie is hilarious, and it's a very specific deadpan kind of comedy. When you're directing comedy and you're working with the actors to get funniness out of them, how do you know if it's working?
I don't.
Yeah. Do you try it a bunch of different ways? And then,
the day before, usually, in the setting, in the place where... for example, in the bathroom, where he falls on the floor, Cheeky falls. He bumps into something and falls. We tried many things, but I think once the actors know the script, it's not a problem anymore. They just know it. They really want to try things and have fun. So yeah, that's what I would say. We try many different things, and as long as they are sincere and willing, I think, as I said, we never know if it's going to work.
And did you feel like your set was a fun place, or did you feel like that space was created, or?
Oh, you mean the bathroom?
No, the set, when you're shooting with the actors, did you feel as though the atmosphere felt fun?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, great.
I had the sound person had to tell me to stop laughing because we could hear me laughing. So yes,
it's a good problem to have. Right?
Yeah.
Great. So we have just a few more minutes before we go out to you guys for questions, so you can start thinking about your questions. Connor, I want to ask you about performance and editing, and what you sort of feel the link is between those things.
It's enormous, because one of my great frustrations as an actor has always been that you don't have any control over editing, and that you basically it's like you're raw material for other people's use, which if you're in the hands of a good editor and a good director, it can be amazing, because you watch a scene and you think, this is so much better than what I did, because I know what I did and this isn't it. It's like, so it can be freeing, but it can also be terrible, because it can obviously, it can go the other way very, very sharply. As a director, it's hard, because you watch things, especially like I edited my own films, and you watch things so many times. I can't imagine how comedy, where I couldn't. It's hard for me to wrap my head around, because you watch things so many times that, in the same way that if you say the word boat 50 times, it doesn't mean boat anymore. So it starts to become hard to tell the difference between takes and how to create flow within things, especially when it's one thing when it's a scene where it's two people talking, but with my films so far, it's been more a line or two here and there within action, which I find, in a weird way, even harder, because the dialogue almost becomes part of the mise en scène instead of just talking. So it's I find editing really hard. Like, it's really, really difficult. And it's when you're an actor, though, and you watch your performance in the final version, you've done it. 6 months passes, and then you see it. You don't feel that difficulty. It feels very obvious to you that, like, that's a bad way to cut that, or that's a great way to cut that. So it's hard to say. That's another reason why I can say with absolute certainty that I will never, ever in this life direct myself in anything. Because it would take me 8 years to cut it. Yeah, I would have a lot of psychiatry bills, I think.
And do either of you have a comment about cutting performance, or maybe around performance?
Yeah, I mean, with first-time actors, I think continuity was really tough, because they're juggling so much. Telling them, oh, please use your right hand here, whatever. Like, it would distract them a lot. So I think I just embraced that we're going to have a lot of continuity issues, which was really tough when we got the footage, to just cut around continuity stuff. But I guess for me, I just, I knew working with first-time actors, I just needed to prioritize. I wasn't gonna get everything exactly the way that you would on another film. So yeah, we just embraced it. We embraced it and we cut around it, and yeah, it worked.
Great, good.
I remember we had many continuity problems too, which was very frustrating, because sometimes the actors were very funny, but no, it didn't work. So you have to make sacrifices, a lot of them. But if you have enough material, anyway, at some point you don't laugh anymore when you edit the film. I mean, you just can't. You love them, but not anymore. At some point, you don't love yourself anymore anyway. But that's all I could say about performance and editing. I mean, it was just this.
Great. Okay, we can take some questions. Yes, right up at the back there. Oh, sorry, you just have to wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Hi. Just overall, between the three of you, as directors in general on any project, what was the most difficult or most elaborate piece of direction you've ever had to communicate to an actor, and how did it play out in your favor, or did you have to simplify?
There's a scene in this movie where one of my characters is like a fox boy. He doesn't really speak, and he's wearing a mask. So basically, his entire performance is physical. And there's a shot where he sort of arrives in the distance, and then in a series of movements kind of approaches slowly. And I was really worried about the blocking of that, and how to, especially working with a young kid, how to create movement where it could sustain like a 45-second long cut. So it really, going into the movie, it was the thing I was the most afraid of, was how to make that work, and it worked like immediately without much effort at all. And then other things that seemed like they would be, that I didn't even think about, that seemed like they would be much, much easier, caused me a great deal of difficulty. So it's maybe just because that thing scared me, I prepared for it very well, and other things that the fear wasn't as huge, I maybe underprepared. So it was a good lesson to me in being overprepared for everything, even the simple things.
I think for me it was what I just mentioned, that scene, that bathroom scene. It was a very emotional scene, and I knew that both actors have experienced something in real life that was very close to what was going on in that scene. So there was the discomfort there of making sure that, you know, that the space was safe, but also that, you know, we got what we needed out of the scene, but we didn't push too far. And the way, as I mentioned, the way that I dealt with it is, because I remember there was a big problem there, because one of the actors, the scene is in a bathroom, and it's a pretty long scene, and he kept saying, I can't believe you wrote a bathroom scene in your film. No one's ever gonna wanna watch our film. Like, it's such a bad location. So he just kept obsessing over that, and I kept saying, where's that coming from? Like, why is he so angry? And then I realized that, you know, it was coming because he was uncomfortable with the scene itself. And as I mentioned, I just took a break, and I went back to asking some broader questions of why are we here and why are we making this film? And the minute they both verbalized their own reasons for wanting to be involved, I think, it kind of just came naturally afterwards.
For me, in my film, there's a sequence in a trailer, and the actress, the female actor, she was, that was her first scene. She was very intense, in fact, she was shy, so she was overplaying it, and she said, I'm Louis de Funès' cousin. And I said, okay, yeah, she's overdoing it. So how am I going to deal with this? Because she's quite famous too, and she was telling me, I'm doing you a favor. I mean, I'm in a short film. It's a favor. I love her, but she's my friend. I was like, yeah, okay, you're doing me a favor, but just okay, calm down. And Cheki was looking at me like. And we had this idea together with Cheki, I remember. We told her, don't play anything. Nothing. Just go straight with the sentences, and she was great. But I remember it was really a hard moment. Just like 10 minutes. Of course, it's a short film. We have no time. We had to rush it, and so we just said, okay, just don't play, and that was fine.
Did anyone else have a tough moment where something really wasn't working on any of your films and with the actors, and how did you get past it?
Maybe not specifically to actors, I'm sure there's several, but for me, in the 3 short films I've made have sort of been like a chronicle of endless tough moments that seem insurmountable and steal something from inside you and never give it back. So, you know, I think you have an idea for something, and that's the best it's ever going to be, and then it's just a process of like trying to hold on to that as much as possible and trying to, where it can, improve it as much as possible. But it's this process of deterioration from that initial state that goes through waves, you know, but still it's an overall process of deterioration. So it's hard for me something I'm really actively trying to improve on, which is why I'm so impressed when I hear these stories of how people work with non-actors and how they open the windows of their films, you know, and let air in, because it's something that I'm really trying and will continue to try to be better at, because it's when you, especially with a short where you've been working on it for a year and everyone else comes in for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and it's very hard to give things up, and not just things, but ideas. it's very hard to give up a way of seeing a scene or a moment or a character. And if you try and force something into a box that it can't fit into, then you're going to get something that's like just like a pale version of what you originally imagined, instead of something that's different but maybe more alive. So I think that's so you end up with like puppets, you know, which is uninteresting, I think. So I think it's a complaint that I have about all of my films that I'm going to try and work on.
Yes, right in the front. Just wait for the microphone, please. Thank you. They will come over to you right here.
You sort of touch on this little bits throughout each one of you talking, but I'd be interested to know if and how this thinking future, how this will affect your approach to acting yourself, and what you take away as actors, or things that you might change or evolve in moving forward with the experience of directing.
Having to direct has given me a lot more respect for directors, because it's not an easy job, like I said earlier, I think it's easy to, as an actor, it's not just as an actor, but any, costume designers are the same way, production designers are the same way, cinematographers are the same way, to see work and to see a project through a very narrow, through your lens. And I think directing has given me more patience as an actor, because you're not the center of, even when you are the center of attention, you're not the center of attention. So it's given me that, I think. But honestly, acting has given me more as a director than directing has given me as an actor, I think.
Yeah, for me, I think working with first-time actors or non-actors just made me a better director. It's a very different approach. It's a lot, I find, maybe perhaps more straightforward. The noise of the action verb and I think these are very important methods, and I've used them with actors that I've worked with, but there was something really freeing about the approach you have with first-time actors, non-actors, and also I would say they taught me a lot. I remember there was a moment where being in the moment came up a lot, because I was trying to convey that, like, how do you convey that, how do you explain that? And we started talking about, paying attention, and so some of the exercises we would do is just to kind of sit and just state everything that you're seeing, everything that you're hearing, everything that you're feeling. It's a lot of theater, work. And I remember Salam came up to me and she said, being in the moment doesn't feel good. Like, I don't know how long you want me to be in the moment for, but this just feels very uncomfortable. So there was, these charming things, it was just so, and I went, she's right. Like, it's not comfortable to be in the moment. It's kind of like a process that you have to, and as an actor, sometimes maybe you're programmed to do that, you're trained to do that, but as a director, I don't think I've ever had that conversation with a trained actor before. And perhaps that's what they're feeling, but it was never kind of conveyed to me in that way. So yeah, it just made me a better director, and I think it's an approach that I actually want to use now moving forward in projects where I'm not working with first-time actors or non-actors, but with trained actors, and kind of seeing if we let go of some of the things that we're taught about how we need to talk to each other as director, actor. Perhaps we will find something really fresh and really new and more real. So, yeah.
Great.
This one was my first produced movie, so the other ones were made with 500 euros. But the thing I observed, and I really want to stay with this, is that it took us a long time before we could shoot this film. So we really worked very hard on everything. We had time for this. And I think I would never leave anything to, how do you say that, chance. The hard work and knowing what is your philosophical message and what is your intention in terms of cinema is very important. That's my lesson by working with strong actors. They're very reassured with that, and I mean, it doesn't mean there's no freedom or improv, but there's such a strong basis, which is the result of hard work, that it's. I think it gives you strength as a director, and that's what I would say.
Great. There's a question right here. And the microphone is coming to you. Oh. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for sharing this morning. I have a question that probably could take a really long time to answer, but what is your preparation like to prepare as a director?
It depends on the film, of course. For me, movies always start with a picture, I guess. So it's very hard for me to understand a movie or to understand what I'm trying to do with actors or with anyone until I understand how the movie's going to look, and what's at least what the core foundational images throughout the film are going to be. Because then I find that it's easy to expand from that into a tone, and from a tone into a type of performance. But that's a very vague way of answering the question. I think specifically, it's like as an actor, people ask all the time, like, what's the process? And it's like for a long time, it's like you try and like sex up the answer, you know? It's like, I like go into a cave for 6 months but the truth is, it's just like a lot of like boring work. It's just like a lot of like sitting with the script and thinking, which is not, it sounds stupid to say, but it's just like you sit and you think and you take notes and you talk to your DP and you talk to your production designer and you watch movies and you see one thing in a movie or one moment in a movie and you're like, now I understand this moment, or someone suggests, and that's the great thing about working with good people, not just good actors, but a good cinematographer, a good producer, a good editor, is that you feel like someone will say one thing, like, well, what if the light turns on in the background? And you're like, oh, now the scene makes sense. Yeah. And so it's just, like you said, giving yourself time in prep for all those things to happen. You know, it's like I couldn't imagine prepping. I have friends who prep shorts in like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm like, it seems crazy to me. It's like you need like 6 months to like say, and I'm full of contradictions. You know, someone will say something one day, suggest an idea. I'll be like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. And then the next day, I'll say like, I have an idea. I think we should do this. And they'll be like, it's like, no, it's my idea. But that's the process, you know, of like, of the movie changing in your head as you make it. So I think it's just about giving yourself enough like, you know, like exercise at it to allow things to develop.
Yeah, I guess I agree. It really does depend on the type of project and the actors that you're working with. When working with, you know, this was a very specific process, obviously, with Rupture, but yeah, for me, it starts with a theme or kind of a sentence that I read in a poem or something. It doesn't actually start from a visual place. And then from that space, I just start to add the visual into whatever theme or line I read or something. And yeah, it's like you said, it's just a lot of sitting with the script and going over what is this moment about and just all that technical work. But personally for me, what I've done in all my films is prep so much, even with Rupture. I mean, some of the blocking was actually choreographed because I needed their bodies to feel natural when they moved, you know, because they're not used to it, especially in front of the camera. So some of it feels like it's so boring and so kind of, you know, technical, and that's the really tough prep you do. That's kind of the film that you're seeing every time after rehearsal or whatever in your mind, and then you get to the monitor, and I'm learning slowly to just take that film and just put it in the back of my mind and say, like, okay, based on all the prep, what is here? You know, what is actually here? And how can I make the best out of what is here? And interestingly enough, every time I've let go, somehow the film goes full circle and I get exactly what I want. And every time I've held on and I was like, we need to get this moment, it's not saying the line right, whatever. It just doesn't work.
That's a really interesting
right?
point, actually, because as an actor, I felt that I get so mad at myself. I've been trying to teach myself
Yeah,
in a similar pace.
it's tough.
Because I get so mad at myself because you do all this work and you make notes and you have all your thoughts, and then you
Yeah.
go to set and you forget all of it. Like
Yeah.
every single thing you told yourself to remember, you forget. That moment you had that you were like, I'm right here, I'm gonna do this, forget. Like it's
Yeah.
every single time, no matter what, I've tried so many different things, I forget every time.
Yeah.
So I used to go home still to some extent and be like, look at my notes and just like sit on my couch for 2 hours and be like, I'm terrible, what am I doing? I'm terrible at my job. But like you said, if you do enough prep, you have to think that somewhere in your head,
It will just, it will flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more I let go now, the more because I think there's this idea, maybe for young, I'm still starting out as a director, you have to know exactly what like I agree, of course you do. You have to prep and you do the proper work for it, but you also have to learn how to let it go and see what's there and really make it real, instead of kind of what's in your head. So I hear you. I used to have these days where I'd go back, like, I had such a good direction for that. Why didn't I? And then I go, well, you know what? It wasn't there on the day. It just wasn't. So, yeah, it's over prepping and then letting go. That's kind of, I think, how it goes. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to work on the Western genre and all the male stereotypes. But so I read a lot of books on Western films and saw every Western film. That was a long preparation, and I spent time on the script too. And you're right. Then you're on the first day of shooting. You have another brain. Like you have to. You forget all about it, but I think it's good.
Right, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, but thank you all for being here, and thanks to you guys as well.
thank you.
Thank you so much to our esteemed guests. And ladies and gentlemen, starting in about 10 minutes in Conference Room B, you can find out how to maximize your short's potential on the business end. So please join us. Thank you.